Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Diana Bitner from True Women's Health, and I'm here tonight with Mitch Shooks of Grip Training, and we'll do a more formal introduction in just a second. First of all, I'm so excited for tonight, and we're going to nerd out about muscle strength. But first, I want to talk about why do I care about this? I'm a women's health specialist, so why do I care about strength training? I don't know about you all, but I love to exercise and be strong, and as I learn, I want to share with you. And when women come and see me, some of the most common reasons they come is, number one, I have low energy. Number two, I don't feel like myself. Number three, I'm gaining weight, but I keep doing the same things. What is going on? And muscle mass is truly one of the basic answers for all of these questions. The other thing that we do at True is, of course, is we ask, what is your picture of self? What do you want? And women say, I want to be healthy. I want to have more energy. I want to feel like myself. I don't want to age like my mom did or my grandma did. Again, muscle mass and strength training are the answers that help women reach their goals. So what I want to share with you tonight is more details about the why and then what to do about it. So having said that, I want to introduce Mitch. Mitch, I'm so grateful that you've joined us. I stay in my lane for the most part, and I really welcome expertise. And so, again, thank you. So many of my patients have seen you, and now I finally get to meet you myself, and I've got an appointment with you on Monday, so I can't wait to learn myself. But I really look forward to you sharing your expertise tonight. I'd love you to talk about why you're here and a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is good to finally connect with you. And as you said, I have heard of you for years because we share so many of the same clients. And so like you, I'm always trying to connect with experts. I stay in my lane. What I know is strength training, fat loss is kind of our game here, and health. And I got into the health and fitness sphere mostly because of a struggle with weight as a child myself. And that was one of my kind of outlets. I wasn't the athletic kid, and so weights kind of were an intro to that. And so that was my formal education. I got into exercise science, and then I studied with the Olympic strength coach, Charles Poliquin, and that kind of got me into the functional medicine world of looking at hormonal balance. And you can't just put this as I'm going to eat less calories and exercise more. We have to look at the whole person, sleep and movement and digestion and, the whole picture. And that's what we do at Grip. When a client comes in, we evaluate everything. We put together a customized plan for them, and then generally try to solve their problem.
But it sounds like we're so much on the same page. It's all about looking at the person as a whole and then looking at all these parts, not just telling people what to do. I never want to tell a woman what to do. I want to say, here, let's learn all about you. Let's learn about your goals, and then let's find a plan that's multifactorial or that covers all bases. Mitch, just real quick, Courtney, yes, this will be recorded and you can watch this at a later date. So it's a question from Courtney. So this will be recorded, and we know a lot of people can't always watch this live. So thank you. And again, I want to say to all of you out there watching live, feel free to put questions in the sidebar, and we'll definitely get to them throughout. So feel free to interrupt with questions. But Mitch, again, I think we're so much on the right page, and I want to kind of get into the why. I think, we're all so smart, and it really helps us if we know why we're going to get up early and work out, or why we're going to work out at night. And this weekend, I was so happy to find an article about the science behind muscle mass. Now, it just sort of spoke to everything that I know, but in more detail. So yep. I'd like to kind of go through these one by one, if you don't mind. Starting with my first one, belly fat. And so many women, they come in and talk about, you just got to help me get rid of this muffin top. You got to help me get rid of this belly fat. And I think it's just fascinating how, as we lose muscle, that contributes to insulin resistance, which makes us store sugar in the belly fat. So what has been your experience in having women ask you about this?
Yeah, so interestingly, where we store body fat is indicative of the hormones you've been exposed to. And insulin and cortisol are your bad guys for the stomach. And your insulin receptor sites are on the muscle, and it's not uncommon. I don't think it's normal, but it's not uncommon that we lose muscle as we age, whether that's because of inactivity, we get busier, there's maybe we're not pushing things as hard as we used to, or maybe what used to work doesn't work anymore. And so when you start to lose that muscle mass, you lose that insulin sensitivity. It is very common to see belly fat become kind of the primary spot we put it on. So.
Sure. And I talk to women a lot about insulin resistance is caused by low estrogen. It's caused by sleep deprivation. It's caused by genetics. Saw a patient the other day, she had diabetes in pregnancy. And of course, now in midlife, she's starting to gain belly fat. She's at very high risk for that. But what I was surprised to learn is skeletal muscle mass has a lot to do with insulin resistance. I don't think I put that together, yep. That as we lose muscle, it really lends to this insulin resistance. And as you say, we're more insulin sensitive. We put sugar in the muscle so we can use it versus putting sugar in the belly fat.
Yeah. And there's only a finite amount of carbohydrates you can store, which are mostly in the muscle, the liver. If you have less of that muscle, it means you're going to be less tolerant to carbohydrates for fat storage. You're going to fill up that tank really quickly, and then carbs just go into fat. They triglycerides right in there, and your cholesterol goes up, your triglycerides go up. So, even that sensitivity to insulin, my mentor was very big on you had to earn your carbohydrates, and that you had to get enough muscle mass, and then you had to use it in an appropriate way to be able to utilize that, not just for energy, for the workout, but so that you didn't store it as body fat. So.
Exactly. I love it when people say, I'm addicted to carbs. I'm like, no, you're not. Your fat is addicted to carbs. So when you eat simple carbs like white rice or potato chips or French fries, or, it's not going to your brain or your muscle. It's going straight to your belly fat. So your fat's addicted, not you.
Yeah, we don't need near as much as we think when it comes to the simple carbs.
So the next thing I think about is energy. So, so many women say, I don't have as much energy as I used to. I want more energy. How can I get more energy? So, of course, it's all of our what we call the seeds, or the 7 essential elements. We got to drink our water. We got to sleep. But muscle is a huge part of it. And again, I love the science of this, is that muscle makes ATP. ATP is our basic building block of energy, right? And it makes our muscles move, but it provides energy for the rest of our body.
Yep. Well, and I would say sleep is probably the most underrated fat burner that people misunderstand. Like either quality of sleep, depth of sleep, your sleep environment is really big. And that perimenopause age is a horrible one for sleep, because you have children who can drive, maybe making college decisions. You got parents you probably have to worry about who might be having health issues. You're in this middle part of life, which can be super stressful. And one of the things I love in your practice is that, we have journals on the shelf behind we give out for grateful logs. It's one of the best things is 3 things you're grateful for right before you go to sleep. And then the backside, you can write all the worries on. So that you don't go to sleep thinking, I can't forget to, make the appointment for the dentist tomorrow, or get Johnny to school at 9 a.m. And, so if you can get that sleep. But what's interesting is they did a study with Olympic athletes, and even one night of disrupted sleep, so that you get less than 6 hours, and even that 4-hour mark is really dangerous. So, things are really bad. You don't get enough sleep. You got some deadline on something. That will disrupt insulin sensitivity in the muscle for up to 3 days, and will make you essentially the insulin sensitivity of a 70 or 80-year-old. I mean, it's really dangerous.
Oh, I've read that same study, and I was blown away. And they did it measuring HOMA-IR, which is a blood test, which my hair is crazy, which is a very sensitive marker of insulin sensitivity. So I actually quote that study to my patients and say, look, like if you get one disrupted night, it throws you off. So you have to prioritize it. And, too, I have patients who say, my husband snores, and I'm like, or I'm snoring. And so we recommend a lot of sleep studies, but I agree. Yeah, with you too. The gratitude journal is so important because it gets us out of that flight or fight, and it helps us get into that easy zone to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So sleep is huge. The next thing we talk about is strong bones. So I have so many patients who want to go hiking, they want to go skiing, they want to go ride horses, but one thing they're worried about is, what if I fall and break a hip?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, patients with bladder urgency. What if I rush to the bathroom and I trip over a rug and I break my hip? So the importance of muscles cannot be underestimated in terms of bone health. And I love how you talk about this as well.
Yeah, so that comes up all the time, right? I'm worried about my bone health. I've been taking calcium. It doesn't seem to be helping. my speech on calcium is like, listen, if you want more cake and somebody doubles the flour, you're either going to get bad cake or nobody's going to eat it. Muscle mass as well as bone are living tissue, and they need that stress in order to grow. And again, if you look at the studies, bone mineral density is directly correlated to the amount of weight you've put through the structure of the spine and the hips throughout the year. So really, strength is one of your better predictors of where bone is going to be. And you can turn it around. It's amazing how much bone mineral density you can increase, but you have to be able to get strong, which strength is a quality that takes a time to develop safely. I mean, you can't just jump in and start pushing heavy weights. You have to lay a foundation and be prepared for that. But yeah, it's really important. But also in that same person who's worried about that, who falls, if she has another 8 pounds of muscle mass around the thigh and the hip and the glutes, like she's protected. You bet.
No, it's huge. And what I love, it's not only the weight bearing, but as I read about this and I was reminded, it's the muscle pulling on the bone. So it's where the muscles are attached to the bone, actually pulling on the bone, which causes stress to the bone. So the bone's like, oh, I got to get stronger. And so it will use that calcium that you're taking. And of course, if you're taking the vitamin D to absorb the calcium, we need both of those together. So it's all of that together. And again, one of the things we'll talk about with bone is testosterone done safely. Not the pellets, but testosterone done safely can even help with bone mass. Yep. But we've got to have that muscle in the first place and then also be stressing it as well. So super important. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was just the whole concept of what's called sarcopenia or frailty. So frailty is that loss of muscle mass to the point where it affects our risk of chronic illness. And as I was looking more about this weekend, I didn't realize so for example, there are studies of women who develop cancer, and with low muscle mass, they don't do as well. And if they have more muscle mass going into a diagnosis such as breast cancer or lung cancer, they do better. Their survival rates are higher. And what I always say is, if there's anything, heaven forbid I ever get cancer, I want to know that I did everything to prevent it. And if I get something bad, I want to make sure I'm as healthy as I can going into it. And that's what I want for my patients. And so, and the other thing, I'm rambling a bit, but the other thing is that as women get to such a low muscle mass, it's hard to ever work out enough to get that muscle mass to come up. And midlife is what predicts 80. Not 70 doesn't predict 80.
Yeah.
60, 50 predict 80. And so I love how you and I talk about this. We got to make it happen. The sooner the better.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarcopenia, it's kind of hit the spotlight in the last few years in the medical world. There's some really interesting CAT scans where you look at somebody who might have the same diameter of thigh, but that one person has a much higher body fat than the other one, or lower muscle mass, you could say. And it is common for us to lose muscle mass as we age. I don't necessarily believe that's normal. And we confuse that a lot, right? Like it's common to gain 30, 40 pounds as we age, but it may not necessarily be normal. We have adopted a Western diet. We have a lot of just bad habits that might go into that. Two of your best predictors of longevity are muscle mass and strength. And they've done these studies and they're crazy, but you can pretty much narrow it down to grip strength. And if you take a grip ergometer, it's such a strong predictor in the elderly, at least, of how long you're going to live and how resilient you are to disease. So you're right, going into cancer, really any kind of treatment, muscle mass is very protective, in part because it plays a role in immune function also. But that person who's stronger is going to be more active, right? They're going to go out for that walk in the woods, and they're going to go play with their grandkids and do things that are more enjoyable. And if you're living in that fear of like injury or I'm not strong enough to go do that, it's funny because I get a lot of trainers, young trainers, who want to train the athlete. And I had a lady we've been working with. She actually drives up from Indianapolis to work with us, and she came back from a trip crying, because she's like, I would have normally, when I got to this place, looked at the hill and said, there's no way I'm going up that. Like I would just sat in the car and said, everybody go with me. But she's like, I decided I've been working out, I can do this. I walked up the hill. It was like this huge accomplishment. And just even that, I was like, listen, if little Johnny gets another medal in soccer, that's cool. But when you change somebody's life like this, like that's a big win. And for her, it was just becoming strong and having those little victories in the gym to where she could, go off and do some of that. on there. So,
Mitch, that's huge. You know, when we get women to do what they want or keep up with their family, that's huge. And Aunt Betty, I see your question. We'll get to you very soon about what to do to bring these to get some strength training. But I want to go back real quick to what you said about immune function. I also didn't realize this, and I found a study that talked about our muscle is the source of amino acids, the basic building block for our immune system. And to recover, let's say we have an injury like a hip fracture or a sprained ankle or a surgery, we need amino acids to heal us from that. And if we're not eating enough protein, then what happens is that we break down our muscle to supply the amino acids for that repair or for our immune system. And so not only do we have to maintain a muscle mass, which is a resource essentially, but also then be feeding ourselves good, healthy protein.
Yeah, it is a reservoir. That's part of why when you get injured, muscle mass can be so helpful in that. And most of if you get really injured, like maybe your bed rest for a while or something like that, you will see the majority of muscle mass loss very early on that. So having that reservoir of muscle is really important. And as we age, we do need more protein. That's often misunderstood. And if you don't measure it, you don't know. And most people can barely tell me what they had 2 days ago for breakfast or lunch. You know, like our recall is really bad, and we tend to overestimate. And so really getting to the nitty gritty and the details. You know, if you're gonna say I'm gonna get you stronger, you better measure it. You know, if you want to be leaner or more muscular, what tools are you using to measure those? And in the fitness world, it's really unfortunate, but there's a lot of just garbage information out there. Or if you go to a trainer and they don't measure those things, how do you know if you're improving them?
Exactly. Well, we have, you know, what people can do is go to our website and download the Seeds ebook, which goes through those 7 essential elements of daily success, including how much protein you're getting. And we have an app for our patients at True that you can actually track those every day or every week. And so, you know, it's a basic way to track it. One can go a lot deeper into this, and we can talk about this in a minute, but it's really being able to track that on a every time basis. And then, you know, we can see that at True. So I think that's really important to your point, to track it, to measure it, and to really understand and think about that. So now that we've established how important muscle mass is and talked about it a bit, why, and again, I think people can tell we could talk about this forever. What does this mean to you? So as you have, let's say you have my Aunt Betty, hey Aunt Betty, walk into your training center. What would you tell her in terms of, Betty, what do you ask? You talk about weight-bearing exercise. Is this lifting weights? Does active walking qualify? Yeah. Would you want to talk about this?
Yeah, if it's for muscle building, no. If it's for bone density, maybe if you were really inactive. So the body's really smart, and it will adapt to a stress very quickly. It'll make you efficient before it makes you stronger or bigger in terms of muscle. And I say bigger, it's a scary word when we talk to women about that. I will show you a picture at the end of what happens when women weight train properly. You will get smaller. I mean, it's one of my favorite clients lately because she's in jeans she never thought she could wear. So you have to progressively put enough stress on the body, and that active walking is good, but you'll probably get the majority of that benefit probably the first 3 months you do it, and then you're going to maintain a slow loss. So unless you're really putting more stress throughout time there, it's not enough. So
Mitch, what would you say? Sometimes when, you know, people love to walk, it's a common exercise, to do it with their friends. Yep. Even one thing that I'll suggest is to, as you're walking, stop and do squats and lunges. Walk, stop, do squats and lunges. Do some lunge jumps, do some squat jumps, you know, so just some things to add to that. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so if that is like more than what you've done, for sure, there's going to be an adaptation. It'll be good for you. So my mentor's favorite saying was the best program for you is the one you're not on. And that's because we adapt to things really quickly. And so I tell this to a lot of the moms. I was like, listen, if little Johnny came home from, you know, 3rd grade with the same lesson every week, you'd be like, a little confused. But week 3, you'd be like, man, they should be learning something else. By week 4, you're like, all right, this teacher doesn't know what they're doing. And physical learning is essentially what's happening with weight training. You're trying to teach a lesson, whether that's strength or muscle mass or endurance or. So the program, Leanne asked the question, when lifting is heavy weights, low reps, or light weights? Yep, they're both right. because as soon as you adapt to a program, and that happens within 4 to 6 exposures to a stress, you need another program, because you start to accumulate the bad after 6 exposures. So if you're always doing the same thing, you stop physically learning.
So, I mean, and plus I think it's good for our mind to do different exercises, but one thing my friends and clients know is that I love the Peloton app, for example. So I love how I'll do a different workout, chest and back and arms, and some of it's, higher weight, lower reps, some of it's, but again, I know if I'm going to do more reps, I'm going to build more endurance, right? And maybe I'm going to build my muscle strength and how big it is if I do lower reps, higher weight, lower reps.
Yeah, for women, you tend to hypertrophy at a higher rep range than at a lower rep range. This is one of those common ones you hear. Good. That's not always true. So generally, if it's under 20 seconds of tension, I'm talking true tension, where we're working as hard as we can for 20 seconds, you will get what's called a neural adaptation. You'll get stronger without getting bigger. So if I have to train a wrestler or a figure skater where having them bigger isn't going to help their sport, or one of my women, like Kirsten there popped in. She's one of my strongest clients, but she's a tiny little thing. And so it is a misnomer. Women will put on muscle mass for about 6 months in weight training. Your first 6 months are your most gain you're going to get in muscle mass. And after that, it's really about gaining strength. I mean, you'd have to work really hard to get a lot of muscle mass. It's pretty difficult. Usually you just end up taking less space. Your pants fit better. That muscle becomes active. You lose more body fat. So.
And I also love how you and I both agree about, again, measuring it. So at True, we have an impedance scale. I will get to learn about your fancy scale as well. But I think it's, a weight is so much more than a number. So I'll ask people like, what weight are you comfortable with? What do you want? But it's more than just weight or BMI. It's what is your muscle mass? What is your body fat percentage? What is your visceral fat percentage? And the visceral fat is that fat that's around your organs that can increase your risk of diabetes and dementia. And so I think measuring that is so important. How have you used that at your center?
In terms of measurements or distribution? So ideally every 2 to 4 weeks, we measure a client to see if we are moving the right direction on that. And so we use 3 different. We use BIA, like you mentioned, bioelectrical impedance, because that can give you some insight on some things. Calipers will tell me distribution of fat based on hormonal exposure. I think you're going to like that. I'm going to do that for you on Monday. And then we just started with a new 3D scanner, which is slightly intimidating, but also a really nice one because it can measure you very accurately. It's based on DEXA scan technology, so it's very accurate in general populations. And so because we see such a wide variety of people, we really want to get the most clear picture we can. And if somebody comes in to gain muscle mass, I want to make sure we're doing that. And so the more measurements I have, the more accurate we can be that we're doing. And then that allows us to refine our process. If I see another woman at 53 who's got no history in weight training, and then we start, and what can I expect? Because I want to give somebody a realistic expectation. We live in the days of before and afters on Instagram and Facebook, and we expect these massive transformations. They can happen. They're just hugely disruptive to your life sometimes, and they may not be worth it. You might say that's not the quality of life I want, but I can get 80% of that. I can get stronger, leaner, but I don't have to radically change my lifestyle.
Agree. And I think it's about outcomes. And I see Jennifer has a question. Oh, first, Marla, can Mitch touch on why after menopause, most variables the same, we lose muscle mass and gain fat? Well, I guess if I could talk about it just for 2 seconds, Marla, Marla, it has to do, of course, with hormones in terms of estrogen and testosterone. And for example, we know that even skeletal muscle has estrogen receptors. And we know that women who, for example, after menopause take estrogen, if it's safe for them, then it helps with muscle repair and muscle building, but also testosterone. And so at True, we use FDA-approved testosterone following the International Menopause Society guidelines. And women after menopause who choose to take testosterone, again, that can help with bone mass and with muscle mass. But these hormone changes also make us insulin resistant. And that's why they gain the belly fat and lose the muscle mass if you don't challenge it. One last thing is I saw a study that showed that if, we used to think again that people would lose muscle mass with age, but it was proven that if those, one individual just kind of hung out and did basic activities of daily living and another individual in that same community was exposed to weight training, they actually built muscle at the same rate as a young person, but it's the person who just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So, Mitch, I know Marla wanted you to address that as well.
Yeah, again, back to common and normal, right? It's common to lose muscle mass and not normal. And I totally agree. It's all, menopause, we have this huge drop in estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It is a very hormonal response to what's going on. So yeah, hormone replacement therapy is a lot of times the answer there. Some of the other thing too, though, like I alluded to before, if you find yourself doing the same things over and over and expecting what used to happen, it could be you just adapted to what you've done. But if you are losing muscle mass, you're going to have to take in less calories for a while until you build some of that muscle mass. Very often, it is people get stuck doing the same type of training they've always done. And we've trained people, oh wow, I mean, I've had some clients over 20 years, but like we've had clients 8 years running that have never repeated the same workout, which is a lot of work on our part to keep educating them. But you have to think of it like, you're going through this master's degree of learning how to weight train. It's always teaching you something else and what's that adaptation. And on our own, we often just do the things we're comfortable with, and those
Exactly.
aren't always effective.
But too, again, I love even interval training, on my spin bike, it's that interval training, those climb rides. Not only is it mentally like stimulating, but it's also like, I know it changes it up because again, we're young and healthy. So if we keep doing the same thing, our body is going to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's good. So I also want to get to, Jen asked a question. Jennifer, if you lift weights 3 times a week and walk the other 4 days, is that good for a woman with osteoporosis? Mitch, if you want to take this.
Yeah, it can be. As long as those 4 days a week, again, I think you might hear this theme coming out that your weight training has to be progressive. It has to be different, and it has to like teach you something. If it's the 4 or 3 workouts you've done for the last 4 years, probably not. It's probably going to maintain and maybe even maintain a slow loss. So you'll be much better off than if you weren't doing that. But that is enough if you are doing it correctly.
And Jennifer, the other thing I would say is that, again, a lot of women can have osteoporosis, but to break something, you have to fall, right? I mean, you can develop small breaks in your spine without falling, but in terms of breaking a hip or a leg or a wrist, you have to fall. And if you're stronger and you're practicing your balance and your coordination, you're less likely to fall, even if you kind of get off balance. So again, we've got to be responsible, make sure we don't have loose rugs, be in our body when we walk out into the garage, down our stairs, but be in our body, but we've got to have that strength and not be afraid of falling. So it's also training for balance. Mitch, I wonder if you want to get to that picture. I can't believe we're already at a half an hour before we get to our tips and questions. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this is another client. She drives probably over an hour to come over here, and we've been working with her husband, and she asked if she could come in and train, and I said, yeah, come on in. And this was about 6 months work with her. So she did a lot of this on her own. We would write her programs. She would do the nutrition. On the left there, she's about, I think, 36% body fat, which is a little too high for health. She's 48, I believe, when she came in. And she dropped over half her body fat. I think in the right there, she's 17, 18%, which is just fantastic. She's at a weight she had never been, even in high school. We taught her how to eat for her body. We measured it. We changed it based on what we saw. And she gained quite a bit of muscle mass, but as you can see, she's a lot smaller. And she's a lot stronger. I can guarantee you her bone mineral density went up. She's way healthier. I mean, she even looks more vibrant. She's one of my favorite clients lately.
Poster child.
Yeah, she's a little bit of the poster child right now, that's for sure.
No, that's awesome. So thank you for sharing that, and thank her for letting you share that. I appreciate that. What I like to always get to as we round up is 5 tips that we want to leave you with. And of course, it'll be hard not to have more conversations, but just to start, number 1 tip is muscle mass at midlife predicts how you will age. Again, I can't stress this enough. It's what you do at 40, 50, and 60 that predicts 80, 90, not 70. We can't wait anymore. And Mitch, I know you talk about this as well.
Yeah. We talk in investments here. If you want to retire well, you don't start investing at 70. You really, this is a long game. And gaining muscle mass early on, becoming comfortable in the gym with strength and around that concept. And even if you look at the research for fat loss, weight training is by far one of the best ways to do it. If you're doing cardio mainly as a fat loss tool, you have to add 10% every year to maintain the same weight. So if you're that runner doing 10 miles a year, the next year at 51, it's 11 miles, and then it's 12.2, and it takes a lot of work. So, protecting that muscle, it's kind of the key.
No, I hear you. And Laura, I see you say, I really miss working out. It's all about on days that you don't have as much energy or you worked a long shift, what little bit can you even do in terms of building that muscle? And, is it even just 10 minutes, will do something. So, Mitch, don't you agree that for people who don't have a lot of energy, they have other issues going on, every little bit counts?
Yeah, even a small amount is all it takes. And I will say one of the beneficial things that came out of COVID was a lot of really decent free in-home training advice, like videos and apps and stuff like that. Apple's got theirs, Peloton has theirs. You don't need much equipment. I think every trainer under the sun started making in-home workouts for clients. And so yeah, anything you can do is going to be, and really when you've come from not doing much, your best benefit is from doing anything. It doesn't take much. So
no, I love that. And 2, in terms of how midlife predicts how you'll age, I have women who say, my mom has dementia and that's really, has me worried. As we exercise, as we keep our muscle mass up and our weight down, it helps blood flow. And those same risk factors for heart disease are the same risk factors for dementia. Yep. So if we can build our muscle mass, exercise more, it will reduce our risk of dementia, or at least when and how we'll develop it. So it really does predict. Number 2, muscle mass predicts how you control your weight as you age. And Mitch just alluded to this, but it's so much more effective than cardio. Do you have any other examples you might want to talk about?
No, other
than put you on the spot.
Yeah, gaining that muscle mass, it's one, you got to measure it, so you got to know kind of where you're at. I think a lot of people when they get an accurate measurement, they're often very surprised that their body fat's higher than they thought, and it's super intimidating. I get it. Nobody wants to come in and have somebody grab their fat or tell them where they're at, but it's one of the best things you do. You can't improve what you don't measure.
The same thing, and I have so many patients too who are surprised when we do their body mass and their fat mass and their muscle mass, really surprised. And then we've got the age normative right on the piece of paper, and it can be pretty shocking. But I'd like to think it's like, okay, let's look at this as a gift, and this is, now we know where we're starting, and let's build from there, and be grateful that you're starting from where you are, and then now we have knowledge to take that forward.
And it's a remarkably quick turnaround too. This isn't like, oh, I got to do this for a year to see any changes. Mm-hmm. It can happen very quickly.
No, that's cool. So tip number 3, muscle mass improves your ability to survive and thrive during health challenges. So if you have an injury, if you develop a cancer, if you have an infection, heaven forbid, pneumonia from COVID, we know that people who walk into a bad situation with more muscle mass do better.
Yep.
I guess that's just pretty clear, right? So we got to build that. So number 4 tip, set and keep a schedule. If I didn't set a schedule, I wouldn't do it. And every Sunday night I make my schedule for the week. And I've used tips in the past. It sounds like I'll get more on Monday, but what do I need to do each day and how can I parse it out? I talk to patients all day about this. One of the big barriers is I'm busy, I don't have any time, and I ask people, just put this on your schedule like you would a doctor's appointment, like you would work. Like, Mitch, how have you used this in your practice?
Yeah, it has to be number 1 a priority. We do some lessons about intention and what are your 5 whys and getting to why this is important to you. So if you get deep enough into that, There's this myth of discipline, right? That I don't have enough discipline for it. And I know this is extreme, but like it comes down to love. It really does. And if somebody took one of my children and said, hey, you've got to exercise at least 3 times this week, or you don't get to see your daughter next week, I get those 3 exercise sessions in. I would make it a priority because I love my daughter. And then once you take that back and say, hey, do I love myself? Do I love my health? Is this something I really care about? It doesn't have to be much. If you're not doing anything, again, your biggest return is the first thing you start doing, whether that's going for a walk or taking an extra trip up the stairs. But again, there's so many like cheap or easy like online stuff just to do at home. And like you said, like you're going for the walk, do a couple of squats, do some lunges, the push up against the fence. Like it really doesn't have to be much. I'm kind of a closet exerciser. I was the guy who waited for the gym to be empty and then go in there when I was a kid. I know, like, I really tried to build a place where people don't feel intimidated when they come into a gym. And people want to get fit before they come see a trainer and stuff like that. Like, so sometimes having somebody lay out like, hey, this is the best thing for you. This is the best use of your time. That's really what a good trainer can do for you. And then sometimes it's just the appointment, right? Like maybe that discipline becomes, I'm going to make the appointment. I'm going to show up. And women, you guys are notorious about not putting yourselves first. It's like the family first, and mom and dad first, and work and stuff first. At some point, you have to put yourself first because what sacrifices is your health, and you can't take care of anybody else when you're not healthy.
I love that. And what came to mind is I had a patient who said, I just don't know where I can fit it in. So I actually got a piece of paper out and we walked through her schedule. And, for example, one of her things is she said, I want to come home. My husband's made dinner. I don't want to run off and exercise. I'm like, that's cool. Do your day. And maybe if you're not home right at the same time, maybe you just take a little walk around the block, and then you guys make dinner together. You kind of hang out, but then you don't get in that rut of sitting and watching TV. Yeah. Maybe you just kind of hang out for a while, let dinner settle, and then say, hey, let's go for a walk. And then you can get on the treadmill and lift some weights, take a shower, clean the kitchen, and go to bed. Yeah. So it's like we walk through her schedule, and now she's exceeding her. Now that she has more energy and she's lost some weight, now she's like, come on, honey. And now, she insisted we're getting a treadmill, and he's like, oh, you're not going to use it. And now he's using it. So it's just so exciting to see, that gradual transition. So I love it. I see a question from Carrie. Mitch works with clients to develop a plan. Oh, where is he located? So Mitch, do you want to talk about setting a schedule? Where would someone see you if they wanted to include you in their schedule?
When or how?
Carrie asks, where are you located?
Oh, yeah, we're at Cascade and Spalding in Grand Rapids here in the old Morgan Stanley building. And you can reach us at our website and fill out an inquiry. We'll get right back to you. And then we do it only by appointment. And we work with every budget on that, really depending on what people want. And if you have any questions about, I see a question about money on there, some former clients and stuff. If you email us, we'll answer all that. We'll give you a full price sheet and answer all that. But
sounds good. Tip number 5, healthy protein after workouts. I was talking recently with this researcher, Dr. Paul Arciero, and he's done so much research on muscle protein synthesis, like how that happens after a workout, if we have a clean protein after a workout. It sounds like you've studied this a lot. I've been adding protein after a workout right away. So what is your experience or your knowledge about this?
Yeah, I think I've experimented.
You probably know a lot, but
every form of it. Yeah. So protein after workout can be fantastic. If you don't have the ability to go get a meal right away, or it's going to be a while, I like a liquid protein. It's about the only time I like liquid food is after workout because your body can partition it and use it. The nice thing about liquid protein, it's really easy to get 20 grams of protein. That's usually around 3 ounces of a animal-based protein. So a lot of women, they to get to that like 60 to 90 mark, a liquid protein can be really kind of easy to put in there. So anything from whey to a collagen. But I'm also a big fan of if you can go eat a solid meal after workout, I have no problem with that too. We can get a salad with a protein on it. We again, I don't get married to anything. I'm going to find out what works for that person. you know, if a shake fits into the life, we're gonna put that in there.
Yep. And a lot of times I'll do a shake, but last night my daughter was here and we seared some tuna, and I had a big piece of tuna and some salad after I worked out last night. So, you know, it's just great to have that knowledge, so then you can make it work with your schedule and your budget and your knowledge base and your taste. So I love that. And Judy asks, hey Judy, how many grams of protein right after a workout? I would say 12 to 25 grams of protein. Mitch, what do you say?
Yeah, that's fine. And then we call it our last rep of the workout. So as soon as you finish, if we have a client on a protein, as soon as they finish, they're over there making their shake. It's the first thing I want them to do is get that in there, because your body's kind of hungry for that. It can really use those nutrients very efficiently. If it's more than a half hour, I'm like, let's go eat something at that point. And I'm a big fan of take a protein shake, depending on how it's balanced, and then even a half hour later having a small meal. Because shakes by nature are meant to digest really quickly. And so that means you might get a little hypoglycemic a little bit later on. You might get an insulin response if it's sweeter or something like that. So,
right. But like for me, I'll work out late at night. Like I'll work out at 8:30, 9 o'clock. And so like to your point, right at my last lap is I'll have that protein shake. And then I'm cleaning the kitchen and starting to settle down and shut down. So again, I love it that people can have this knowledge and then use it to fit, to your point, what fits their lifestyle. Yep. So what I like to move into next are these 5 questions that I want you to ask your healthcare provider. Of course, if you're seeing Mitch or myself at True, we'll be answering for you these questions already. But I want you to be able to know, what is your muscle mass? Like Mitch says, if we don't measure it, we don't know our starting point. So I would want you to be able to get this information from your healthcare provider or your trainer and knowing what is your muscle mass. So I want everyone to really take this seriously. And just like you want to know what's in your bank account before you spend for the week, you got to know what your muscle mass is and where you're starting from. Number 2, what is my level of insulin resistance versus sensitivity? And Mitch and I had a really fun conversation about this. Again, it's where you carry your weight at True. We also measure, not only visceral fat, but waist circumference with a tape measure. Mitch is using calipers. That's one way. Another way, before all our patients are seen at True, is we measure what's called an A1C. So it measures your blood sugar over 3 months. We just start with that. I don't want to willy-nilly just order lots of labs. But if there's really more questions, we potentially could order a fasting insulin level. We look at your lipids and look at your triglycerides. That can also be a clue. So it's putting all of this together, but then also looking at your history. Did you have diabetes in pregnancy? You're very likely to have insulin resistance. Do your parents have diabetes, or a brother or sister? You're more likely to. Are you gaining weight and it just doesn't make sense? That can be insulin resistance. Are you craving carbs? That can be a sign of insulin resistance. So I want you all just to think about this and think about having this as part of your knowledge base. This isn't rocket science. We all deserve to know this about our bodies. So again, question number 2 is, what's my level of insulin resistance? Number 3 is, what's my waist circumference? Mitch, I laugh, when I first started measuring people's waist circumference, it felt very intimate. It felt very like, I don't know if I want to do this, which is so funny because I do pelvic exams all day long and feel ovaries and things. So, but waist circumference just feels really intimate. I mean, do you have issues with people wanting their belly measured? For sure.
I've had women stop me. She goes, my husband doesn't even touch me like this. I was like, yeah, when we're grabbing fat, I ease into it a lot more. We measure it now with a 3D scan. Okay. Which gets it down to it's more consistent, and it's a little, you got to know somebody pretty good to get in there.
Well, and again, 2 people are surprised because they're used to their waist being measured at the skinniest part. And actually, it's really important to measure waist circumference correctly at the top of the sacrum or your backbone, right along the front edges of your hips and just under your belly button. And actually, you can even suck in a bit because we're trying to measure the fat that's inside, not the pooch from maybe the poof from having your babies and getting your tissue stretched out. We really want to measure that fat. So again, having a DEXA scan or a 3D scanner would be even more accurate, but at least it gives us a sense of where we're starting from. Yep. So it's really important to know this. And waist circumference is actually a very specific risk factor for heart disease and diabetes. So important to know this number. And the healthy for women is 35 inches or under. So that's a really good starting point. Under that's what you want, what pants you want to fit in, how you want to feel. But in terms of health, it's about 35 inches is that important number in women. In men, it's 40, I think, right? But I take care of women. So question number 4. What is my phase of ovarian function? So this is all about, are you in reproductive phase when your periods are regular? This is the time that you're most likely to not have insulin resistance. This is the time where it's easier to lose weight. As you get into perimenopause, it gets harder. And to me, it's all about knowing that phase so you know what to expect. And then once you're in menopause, it gets harder. So if you're in menopause, don't give up hope. We can get you closer to where you want to be. But it's when your periods start to change, it is time to get your act together. So know your phase. Question number 5, how am I prepared for injury or illness in the future? Mitch, do you want to take this one? Like, I want people to know this.
Yeah. So again, strength and muscle mass, they're such a big predictor of longevity. And I think we have this intrinsic, like, I don't feel fit anymore, or, even as simple as like, it's hard for me to go up the stairs carrying a basket of laundry and not feel strong on those kind of things. It's a hard marker to say, like, if you can't do X, Y, and Z, you're very likely to get injured. But what you can say is, almost everybody, I can get stronger.
Right.
And it's a really simple, and that, going back to home, like a chair squat, squatting down, not touching and getting out, can you do it once? Can you do it 10 times? Then can we get down onto one knee in a lunge position and get out of there? Those basic, simple strength things, which we don't even think about until they're almost gone and we have to use them again. It is critical. It's coming out more where we understand it. So. Well,
too, I think about, we as a society, as women, are living longer and longer. So for so many women, it's about being independent. Yep. So for example, if you fall down, do you want to be able to get up? That's essentially doing a push-up.
Yeah.
You want to be able to open your own jars, carry your own laundry, carry your own suitcase. I had a patient I'll never forget. She was like 90 and she was sitting on the table and she was kind of slumped. And I said, what's hard for you? And she said, I'm so dizzy. Like, they're doing all this workup, these CAT scans, and, I'm just so dizzy and I feel weak. And, it's so hard for me. And now my kids don't want me to be alone. They're starting to talk about putting me in a home. And I said, how much water do you drink? She was drinking 1 cup of water and 5 cups of coffee. I said, well, what kind of activity are you doing? She's like, well, kitchen to the chair and chair to the kitchen. And, that's about it. And I said, well, what are you, 100? You're only 90. Like, are you giving up already? So we made a plan. She started drinking her water. She started doing some chair exercises. She had PBS and she turned it on every morning at 10 and do her little chair exercises and stuff. When she came back for her recheck, I swear to God, I did not recognize her. Her skin looked good. She was drinking her water. She was taking her vitamins. She's like, I'm going back to the senior center and I'm doing my stuff again. So, even when you're 90, it's not too late. And it totally changed her ability to be independent. And her kids stopped talking about going to a home. And so it really made a difference. So it's pretty exciting. So I love what I do. Mitch, I can tell you love what you do. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if anyone has questions after the fact, please put them in the messages on Facebook. This is also going on Mitch's page as well as ours, and we will definitely get the answer to you. And really appreciate your attention tonight. And we sure hope to see you at True Women's Health to get measured or at GRIP to get measured. We can't wait to meet you and take care of you. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Be well. Thank you, Mitch.